Okay, so we're diving into this uh, GPT4o thing OpenAI has released.
Yeah.
And honestly, the system card, it's a lot.
It's dense.
Yeah, dense is a good word for it.
A lot to unpack.
But the good news is that's our job.
Exactly.
We'll try to make sense of it all so you don't have to
read the whole thing so you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
We'll pull out the most interesting parts.
Yeah, what's actually important.
Exactly.
So people listening can actually, figure out what this all means.
Yeah, cut through the noise. That's what we're here for.
So an Omni model,
Right.
what is that like in plain English?
Well, you know how like GPT-3, GPT-4, they're mostly about text.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah.
GPT-4 Omni, because it can basically use almost any kind of media. Like you've got text, obviously, still, but images, audio, even video. It's wild.
So it's not just understanding the words, it's like understanding the world more like we do with our senses.
Kind of, yeah. It's processing information on a whole other level because it's got all these different ways of taking it in.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's a big jump.
So from what I've heard, it's not just the media that's different, it's also way faster, right?
Yeah, way faster. And cheaper to run, too, which is interesting. The system card actually goes into how much less expensive it is than GPT-4 Turbo, which is something I didn't expect.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they compared the cost.
Yeah, and they talked about how it's better with other languages, too. Not just English, which is huge.
Okay, that is huge. Because language has been a big barrier.
Huge barrier.
For a lot of AI stuff.
Absolutely. And, everyone's been asking for it.
Right, make it work for more people.
Exactly. It can respond to you basically as fast as another person could, too, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about how we talk in real time.
Yeah, because previous models, it was always that slight delay.
Always waiting for it to catch up.
Yeah, and this is like instant.
Pretty close. The system card says it's a matter of milliseconds now, so that's another big thing they've improved.
Okay, but with all this power, all this speed, I gotta ask, did they make sure it's not going to go all Terminator on us?
Right. Well, they did bring in like over 100 experts. They call them red teamers. And these guys, their job was to basically try to break it.
Oh, really? Like ethically try to break it?
Ethically, yes. But seriously, they were trying to find any way to make it go off the rails in 45 different languages.
Okay, so they're taking this seriously. That's good to hear.
Yeah, they had to be sure. Especially with audio now, right? Like, could someone trick it with a certain sound? Could they make it spill secrets? Or worse, generate something dangerous just by saying the right things? That's all new territory.
Right, because before it was all text-based.
Exactly. So this audio stuff, it's a whole new set of worries they had to consider.
So did they find anything, like, were there any moments where it's like, uh-oh, this isn't good?
Well, I wouldn't say uh-oh, but there were definitely some interesting quirks they found. Like whispering, for example.
Like whispering to the AI.
Yeah, like instead of speaking normally, you whisper your prompt. They tried it, and it didn't, like, make it spill secrets or anything.
Yeah, good.
But it did make it mess up more, make more errors. Like, it couldn't handle the distorted audio as well. So maybe don't whisper your deepest secrets to GPT-4o just yet.
Right. Stick to your diary for now.
For now, exactly.
Okay. So whispering, not great. Anything else?
Yeah, distorted audio in general. Whispering is one thing, but any kind of background noise, unclear pronunciation, that kind of stuff, it still trips it up.
So it's not ready to transcribe my 4-year-old's rambling stories.
Not quite yet, but hey, the fact that it can understand clear speech this well is still a massive leap forward. Give it time.
That's true. Okay, so it's got strengths, it's got weaknesses, but what about real-world applications? Like, what did OpenAI actually test it on besides just trying to break it?
Well, they threw a lot at it, but one of the most interesting things they did was test it on medicine, like actual medical exams.
Whoa, seriously? Like diagnose this patient kind of exams?
Well, yeah, like really complex medical stuff. And get this, in some of the tests, it actually did better than AI models that were specifically built for that one medical task.
Get out! Are you serious? Okay, so we're talking, like, this could actually help doctors.
Potentially, yeah. The system card was very careful to say these are early evaluations, obviously.
Right.
It's not like Dr. GPT-4 is going to be taking appointments tomorrow.
No robot doctors yet.
Not yet. But it does make you think, right? Like, what if in the future AI like this is helping diagnose diseases, figuring out treatments, even personalizing healthcare plans? That's the kind of potential we're talking about here.
That's wild.
It's exciting, but also kind of, whoa, this is big stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface of what OpenAI found.
Okay, so what else did they look at?
Well, one of the things that really caught my eye was how GPT-4o changes the way we interact, like socially.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
So they noticed something really specific about how they designed it. It's built to be incredibly polite, like to a fault almost.
Polite how? Give me an example.
Like it always lets the user interrupt. Always.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which makes sense, right? For an assistant, you want it to be responsive.
Right. I don't want to be fighting with my AI to get a word in edgewise.
Exactly. But here's the thing, they started thinking, what happens if we're spending all this time talking to something that's programmed to be this agreeable, this deferential? Could it actually change what we expect from other humans in our lives?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question. Like, do we become less tolerant of normal human messiness?
Exactly, because we're so used to this perfectly polite, always listening AI.
That's fascinating. I never thought about it that way.
And that's just one example they give, but there's this whole other layer in the system card about how GPT-4o could change our culture, the way we communicate, even how we understand each other.
Wow. Okay, so we're not just talking about a new gadget here. We're talking about potentially a whole new way of being.
Exactly. And the implications for, well, everything are huge. But we need to dig into that more after the break because this is getting good.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on GPT-4o and its impact on, well, everything, it seems, right after this. So before the break, we were talking about how GPT-4 could actually change, like how we interact with each other.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the ripple effects, right? Like it's not just about the tech itself
Exactly. It's how we use it.
and how it uses us, maybe.
Ooh, that's getting deep.
Right. But there's this whole other side to it too. Like they talked about how GPT-4o could actually change how we make discoveries, like in science.
Oh, wow. Okay. I hadn't even thought about that angle yet.
Yeah, it can process so much information, right? And it can see these patterns that maybe we wouldn't.
Right, because it's looking at so much more data than any human could.
Exactly. So imagine like medical breakthroughs, new materials, even fundamental physics stuff. OpenAI seems to think GPT-4o could be a game changer there.
So it's like having like a superpowered research assistant that never sleeps.
Right. And it never gets tired of reading those super long research
Oh,
papers.
thank goodness for that.
Right. But then, of course, there's the flip side.
There's always a flip side.
Always. Like, what if it helps us develop something with consequences we didn't foresee? Or what if, like, the information it gives us is wrong, misleading? That's a
Mhm.
whole other can of worms.
Right, because we're so used to trusting technology.
Exactly. And with something this powerful, that trust has to be earned.
OpenAI seems to get that though, right? Like they spent a lot of time talking about the ethical stuff.
They did. They did. They know this isn't just a fun toy.
Right, this is serious business.
Serious business. And they talked about how we need transparency, accountability, all that good stuff.
Well, that's good to hear at least.
Yeah, they're not shying away from the big questions, which I appreciate.
Me too. So we've talked science. What about art? Can it write poetry or
Oh,
something?
you better believe it. Music, poetry, even movie scripts, you name it. They talked about all of that.
So is this the end of human artists then? Are we all out of a job?
That's the big question, isn't it? But I think OpenAI sees it more as a partnership. Like, imagine using GPT-4o to break through writer's block or to experiment with new musical styles. It's a tool.
Okay, so not replacing humans, but helping us be even more creative.
Exactly. But of course, that brings up a whole other set of questions.
Like what?
Like, who owns the copyright to a song GPT-4o helped write? Who gets the credit?
Oh, yeah, those are really interesting questions.
Right. We don't have all the answers yet, but at least they're asking the right questions.
True. So we've covered art, science. What about education? Could this change how we learn?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine personalized AI tutors for every student.
No more struggling to keep up in class or being bored because it's too easy.
Exactly. It could tailor the learning to each student's needs.
That would be incredible. But what about teachers?
That's the big one, right? But again, OpenAI seems to think it's not about replacement. It's about empowering teachers, giving them more time to actually teach?
So less time grading papers, more time actually working with students.
Exactly. But of course, there are challenges.
Like what?
Well, access to the technology would have to be equal, right? You can't have some kids benefiting and others not. And then there's data privacy, bias in the algorithms, all that.
Right. It can't just be a tool for making inequality worse.
Exactly. But the potential is huge if we can get it right.
Okay, so education is a maybe. What about jobs in general? Is the robot takeover upon us?
Right, everyone wants to know.
Because this thing could do so much.
It can, and honestly, some jobs will probably be automated.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
It is. But OpenAI also thinks it'll create new jobs in fields we can't even imagine yet.
Okay, so maybe it's not just doom and gloom.
Maybe not. But we have to be smart about it. We need to train people for the jobs of the future, make sure the benefits are shared, all of that.
Right, because technology should be for everyone, not just a select few.
Couldn't agree more.
This is a lot to think about, even just this system card.
It really is. And honestly, we've only scratched the surface.
There's just so much there. But before we go totally down the rabbit hole, you said there was one more crucial area we need to talk about. All right, so before the break, you were about to lay down this, crucial area around GPT4o. What is it?
Oh, yeah. It's ethics. We have to talk about ethics with this thing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense with all the stuff we've been discussing. But, what specifically? What are the big ethical red flags they're waving in this system card?
Well, misuse is a huge one. I mean, think about it. This thing could make some seriously believable fake news. Or, deep fakes that could really harm people.
Right, if it's as good as they're saying it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the system card even talks about manipulating people, on a whole new level.
Okay, so that's pretty intense. What are they doing to, stop that from happening?
Well, they're talking about safeguards. Really strong safety measures, ethical guidelines, that kind of stuff.
So, building the fences while they're building the tool?
Yeah, basically. They're saying it's not enough to just make the AI. You got to make sure it's used for the right reasons.
That makes sense. Anything else they highlighted on the ethical side?
Transparency. They're saying because this thing is so complex, it's hard to understand how it makes decisions.
So like a black box, kind of.
Yeah.
We see what goes in, we see what comes out, but who knows what's happening in the middle?
Exactly. And their point is we need to figure out how to make that decision-making process clearer so we can see if it's biased, or if there are unintended consequences.
Okay, so it's not just about stopping the bad stuff. It's about understanding how it thinks so we can steer it in the right direction.
Exactly. And that's on all of us, not just OpenAI. Researchers, policymakers, even everyday people, we all have a role to play in figuring out how this stuff gets used.
It's a lot of responsibility. It's kind of overwhelming, honestly.
It is. It really is. But it's also kind of exciting, right?
Ah.
I mean, we're talking about shaping the future here.
True, true. It's just, we have to be careful. And smart.
Absolutely. We can't just get caught up in the hype.
Well said. Wow, okay, this whole deep dive has been a wild ride. Honestly, I feel like I need to go back and listen to it again to absorb it all.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
So for people who have been listening along with us this whole time, what's the one thing you really want them to take away from this whole conversation about GPT-4o?
Honestly, it's that this is just the beginning. This technology, it's going to keep changing, and it's going to change us along with it. So stay informed, ask questions, and don't be afraid to speak up about what you think the future should look like. Because ultimately, it's up to all of us to decide how we want to use this stuff.
I love that. So well said. Okay, everyone listening, you heard it here. Go forth and be thoughtful about AI. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.